Father, we ask that today you would bless us, you would bless these folks. Your law never changes. You still demand righteousness of us. You have justified us at the cross. Now the question is, how will we respond to that great salvation? Give us faith and courage and love and honor. Give us the ability to follow you unswervingly, no matter what the costs, no matter what the time, no matter where we are. That in the end you might say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. And yes, brother, you will be a pastor forever. Amen. Because you are a shepherd. Amen. You have a shepherd's heart. Yes. And a shepherd's heart is hard to come by. Because we've got a bunch of folks now that are busy shearing the sheep, not feeding the lambs. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much. The Torah portion for today, by the way, is Numbers 16:1 through 18:32. That's an interesting bit, because that is the rebellion of Korah, something we covered a few weeks ago. Remember Korah, he rose up against Moses. And when he rose up against Moses, well, bad things happened to him, because he was rising up against God, not against Moses. Moses was just the representative. God was the target. Why? Because God hadn't chosen Korah. He thought it was a big shot, like the world needs one more big shot. But Korah thought he was. And he had two brothers that went along with him. Dumb and Dumber, I think. Because what happened to them? They opposed Moses and Aaron, and God consumed them absolutely the next day with fire. And what happened to Korah and the rest of the 250 scoundrels? The earth literally opened up and swallowed them. Now, interesting, Moses said, but this isn't part of the sermon, it just sort of reminded me of it. But that really never matters to me. I just kind of wander till I get someplace. I feel like Israel. I just kind of wander till I finally get somewhere. Moses told all of the people of Israel, he said, hey, y'all better get away from these guys, because bad things are about to happen. If you don't want to get eat up at the fire, get back. And they got back, and sure enough, the fire ate them. And then he looked at the rest of the 250 and he said, now Israel, get back. This ain't going to be pretty. And the ground opened up and not just swallowed them, their family, their goods, everything they had. The fire burned up not only these two men, the brothers, but everything. Everything was burned up. Their families, their goods, everything was gone. Blessing is absolute, so is judgment. And that's what Korah found out. And then what does Israel do? They just see these guys and their families, their tents, their goods, their everything they've got burned up with fire, swallowed up by the earth. Israel comes the next day and does what? Complains at Moses, says, hey, you killed these people. We love these guys. Now, I'm not the brightest guy in the whole world. But if I had just seen two guys get burned up with fire from heaven, and if I had just seen the earth open up and swallow 250 people and their families and their tents and all of their goods, I might have said, well, maybe I won't complain to God yet today. Maybe give it a day or 2, 3 before These idiots come and they're complaining again. Moses, you killed our friends. Moses says, no, I didn't. God did. He said, at your request. And the plague starts. And they're dropping, and they're dropping, and they're dropping. And before it was done, before Moses could instruct Aaron, fill a censer with incense and go out and stand in the gap for the people, before he could get it done, 14,700 people died of the plague. That was Israel. God's chosen people. These are the people that he groomed. These are the people he had chosen before Genesis ever came about. Before the world was, these were his people. This was Abraham that he called out. Remember, he called Abraham's daddy, and his daddy only went so far, got into idolatry. So here's Abe looking around. So God says, I want you to go out. I'm going to give you a land that's going to be a promised land. He said, I think I'll just stay here, Lord. That's all right. I'm happy. I'm good. Why? Because going out was dangerous. I mean, listen, you go out in those days, you're facing every hostile tribe out there. And Abraham says, no, really, I'm good here. I'm happy. God says, no, you're not. He says, yeah, I am. No, you're not. And Abraham went. And Hebrews tells us that he went out into a place that he should after receive for an inheritance. But he didn't know any of this. He just went. So he came from idolatry, like you. He came out of idolatry to do what? To serve God. The difference between rebellion and following. Rebellion, God's own people were destroyed. He personally destroyed them. The Haftorah, by the way, is Samuel 11:14 through 12:22. Unless this service runs 7 hours, I better not even get into the Haftorah. The text, Isaiah 24, 1 through 6. And I've got to tell you, it is with fear and trembling that I'm approaching this message that I think Yahweh's going to have me deliver, because it's not one that I want to say. It's not one that I want to do. But I think we all know we're living in the end times. The apostles thought they were living in the end times, but what we see around us now is end times. We see the event shaping up in the Middle East. We see the things shaping up here and around the world. Isaiah 24, 1 through 6. Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. And it shall be as with the people, so with the priest. As with the servant, so with his master. As with the maid, so with her mistress. As with the buyer, so with the seller. As with the lender, so with the borrower. As with the taker of usury, so with the giver of usury to him. The land shall be utterly emptied and utterly spoiled, for the Lord hath spoken his word. The earth mourneth and fadeth away, the world languisheth and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled unto the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, with few men left. Now there's a nice, happy, uplifting thought from the throne room, isn't it? Because if you think it's bad now, wait a week. So the question is, will America be judged? Are we the new Israel? Are we above it all? Well, as all of you know who know me, I am not a replacement theologian. I do not believe America is the new Israel. I'm an inclusion theologian. That is, I believe that whether you're Jew or Gentile, you have been folded into the house of Israel, and Judah and Israel are joined together again. That's what Paul says. That's what the prophecy was from several places in the Old Testament, that the twin twigs would be once again joined together, Judah and Israel, and whether you're Jew or Gentile, you'll be folded into the house of Israel. Why? Because we now are part of a Jewish family. Messiah has adopted us. So we know about Korah. Israel was told to get away from those traitors, because bad things are going to happen to them. 14,700 died. Rebellion has a price. It always does. Look at King Manasseh, 2 Kings 24. In the days of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant for 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. Now, why was Nebuchadnezzar in charge in the first place? Because of Israel's sin. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't there to be a director for them. It was punishment. They rebelled against God. Now they're rebelling against the punishment. And the Lord sent against him bands of Chaldeans and bands of Syrians and bands of Moabites and bands of the children of Ammon, and sent against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servants the prophets. Surely the commandment of the Lord came upon Judah to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did, and also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord would not pardon that sin. Manasseh was the 14th king of Judah, and he was an evil king. Idolatry, paganism, child sacrifice. They offered their children. He offered his own sons to the god Moloch, burned his own flesh. He allowed witchcraft, fortune tellers. He passed his sons through the fire to the god Moloch, the god of pleasure. Scripture tells us that he filled the streets of Jerusalem with blood. In fact, God said, if you grab the very horns of the altar, which was supposed to be a place of refuge, if you grab the very horns of the altar, I'll rip you off to destroy you personally with my own hand. Why? Because there's a sin God will not pardon. That's the shedding of innocent blood, because the blood cries out to him. He tore down the altars of the Lord, and he built pagan chapels and pagan temples and pagan altars. He destroyed the history and the heritage of Israel. He changed the times and the seasons. And he brought chaos to their land. Does any of this sound familiar? Chaos in the streets. We have now killed 62 million babies in this country. 62 million with abortion. We have exported another 275 million children's deaths since 1973. The world didn't know abortion until we introduced it. 325 to 350 million lives. The streets of Washington, D.C. are filled with blood because that's where the Supreme Court said, yes, mothers, you can murder your own flesh.
Yeah.
We ask, do Black Lives Matter? Every night we see it on television. Do Black Lives Matter? I question those people that ask the question. Do Black Lives Matter? If so, why have we slaughtered 25 to 30 million black children and called it choice? Do they really matter? We filled the streets of Washington, D.C. with blood. Right here in Dallas. It began at a courthouse. And they said, yeah, you can kill your kid. It's okay. You know, the interesting thing was, and Patrick, you know this, you've taught on this, that courthouse stands where it used to be an Indian sacrificial ground, and blood was shed there regularly. It is a place of blood. But we did not break the curses. And the curses continue. How do we answer to Yahweh for the blood of 325 million children? You know, that's the population of the United States. 325 million. You know, the scary part is, Yahweh's justice system always requires blood for blood. A life for a life. That's scary when I think about it. A life for a life. 325 million of them. Jeremiah 50 and 51 are, in my way of thinking, some of the scariest chapters in all of Scripture. It identifies a nation And when you look at what it describes, you run through the things that we always think about in eschatology, which is a big word meaning end times. The revived Roman Empire, Israel, maybe it's Europe, the EU, the Vatican, Russia, China. Maybe it just meant old world Babylon. Jeremiah says the word of the Lord came to him. He said, "Speak against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by the prophet Jeremiah. Declare ye among the nations, and publish, and set up a standard, publish and conceal not. Say, Babylon is taken, Bel is confounded, Merodach is broken in pieces, her idols are confounded, her images are broken." Bel, by the way, is the demon god of Babylon. Bel, Baal, same thing. He was a war god, a destroyer. And interestingly, one of his titles was Shredder of the Innocent. Shredder of the Innocent. Merodach, another name for Bel, destroyer, Shredder of the Innocent as well. They both meant the same thing. And what was the fate of Babylon? Jeremiah 50, verse 3. "For out of the north cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein, and they shall remove, they shall depart both man and beast." An army of the north. By the way, that army of the north is a double-edged sword. One of the expressions of this biblical time was an army of the north. Where did the demon gods come from? They lived, supposedly, theoretically, mystically, in a mountain to the north. And when these demon tribes would come rolling down at Israel and at Judah, they would say, "It is the army of the north come." Why? Because all the people with the demon gods from the mountain of the north would come. So it had a spiritual connotation as well as a physical connotation. The spiritual army from the north is coming, and the physical army from the north is coming. In those days, and in that time, saith the Lord, the children of Israel shall come, and the children of Judah together, going and weeping, and they shall go and seek the Lord their God. Why? Because this land, whatever it is, this end time Babylon, that had always protected them, is suddenly gone. It has been emptied. The armies of the north have come. And Babylon is gone. It says it's empty, it's desolate. None shall dwell therein. The people have departed from it. Where did they go? Well, most of them got dead. And some left. You know, the Lord always gives warning, doesn't he? Before World War II, the Hebrew prophets went through Germany. Many of them went door to door to door to the Jewish community and said, "Flee out of the land before judgment comes." Flee. Remember we talked last week about who the Germans were. They were the Assyrians, came up through the Caucasus Mountains and down into the Germanic areas. They had hated the Jews from of old. It's the spirit that drives them. You see the rise of anti-Semitism again in Germany. Vicious. And by the way, you see the work that Hillary Clinton did. And by the way, I'm not a 501c3, so no one can threaten to take away my 501c3. No one can threaten to take away my tax exempt status because I ain't tax exempt. I preach what I preach because I believe the Lord gives me to preach what I preach.
Amen.
So Israel's suddenly saying, "Oh my, our big brother protector is gone. We have no one." And they say, "Let us find the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, Come and let us join ourselves together with the Lord in a perpetual covenant forever that shall not be forgotten." Why? Big brother protector is gone. Now they're saying, we got no one left but God. So what happens? All of those years of prophecy now come to roost right here. Israel returns to the Lord. Why? Because they've got no choice. It's either death or God. And they figure even God's better than death. So they turned their faces thitherward, it says in the King James. And they asked the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, Come and let us join ourselves to the Lord in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. Well, Yahweh never forgot it. It was Israel that forgot it. It was Judah that forgot it. And now the twin twigs joined back together with the house of Israel and the house of Judah and the folded in Gentile nations through Ephraim and Manasseh. They say, let us make a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. Why? Because they got no choice. They're alone in the world and they're facing a hostile world, a very hostile world. Remember what Hillary Clinton did. Her State Department overthrew the governments of Egypt, the government of Libya, the government of Tunisia. She riled up the spirit of the kings of the Medes in Iraq and Iran. She overturned her State Department, Obama State Department, the Bush State Department. They overturned Iran and Iraq. They stirred up the spirit of the kings of the Medes in Iran. They overturned Iraq. Saddam Hussein's gone. What is it now? It's a Wild West show out there. And guess who has influence? Iran. Guess what Iran is? Iran is ISIS. Iran is Hezbollah. Wicked people do wicked things, but it has all been prophesied. Remove out of the midst of Babylon, verse 8 says in chapter 50, Go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, and be as the he-goats before the flock. And who are the Chaldeans? Interesting, if you look up in Scripture, the word Chaldeans, if you look at that Hebrew word, it is a people that were warriors, but they were also bankers, financiers, and diplomats. That was their claim to fame. These were brilliant people. These were the Americans of their time. Bankers, financiers, soldiers, warriors, diplomats. And it's all going to be destroyed. Revelation says, in a day and an hour, that great city. Well, it's not just a city. It's a city within this nation that is Babylon. What does that description sound like? Bankers, financiers, diplomats. Sound like any city that you might know, where the UN might be, or Wall Street might be? That's who the Chaldeans are. They were the early America. For lo, I will raise up and cause to come against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, and none shall return in vain. Every weapon formed against you will prosper. This is what it's saying in Jeremiah. And Chaldea shall be spoiled. All that spoil her shall be satisfied with her. Because ye were glad, because ye rejoiced, O ye destroyers of mine heritage, because you have grown fat as heifers at grass, and bellow as bulls. Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. So we know it's a city, for that's what Revelation tells us. In a day and an hour, that great city is gone. But now it says, your mother who bore you shall be sore confounded. So now we can start eliminating some nations that can't be Babylon or end-time Babylon. Babylon itself didn't have a mother. Babylon has never been conquered and left vacant. It's still there. In fact, Saddam Hussein was rebuilding Babylon. I don't know if he was going to make an amusement park out of it or what he was going to do, but can you imagine some of the rides there? He was going to rebuild Babylon. But there are still villages there, still people living there, so it's not that Babylon. It's not England, because England didn't have a mother, it just became. But England did have a child. It was a wilderness. And remember back to Daniel, the lion rose up on his feet, was given the face of a man and the heart of a man, and the wings were plucked off the lion's back, the wings of an eagle, and they were put where? On a woman who was taken and flown to the wilderness for a time times and half a time. 6 years from now, we'll be celebrating our 250th birthday as a nation. But for 75 to 100 years before that, we were America. We had planted our roots. We were who we were. It took us a while to become free, but we were America. It's like the rest of the states. When you go to Florida, you're an American who lives in Florida. When you're in Texas, you're a Texan who lives in America. It's a subtle difference, but a big difference. The people living in the colonies, while they were British, they were colonists first. So we know that Babylon is both a nation, and we know it's a city. Revelation tells us it's a city and a nation, and now Jeremiah tells us it's also a nation. Babylon has a mother. Babylon didn't have a mother. Israel didn't have a mother. The revived Roman Empire is not a nation. It's a collection. It's a confederacy. Germany, well, they had a mother, the Assyrians. That's who came there. The land must be the hindermost of the nations. In other words, it has to be one of the last of the superpowers. Well, who's the last superpower that came into being? We're beginning to get some pretty good clues here about end-time Babylon. And it's sad. In fact, beyond sad, it's heartbreaking. The hindermost of the nations. That is one of the newest nations, the newest superpower. And perhaps the last superpower. Verse 13, because of the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at her plagues. Isn't that amazing? It is going to be so absolutely thoroughly destroyed that it will be completely uninhabited. And for 1,000 years in the millennial reign of the Messiah, people will still go by end-time Babylon and hiss at her plagues. What does that mean? They're going to go by and go, wow, do you believe that that was once Babylon? And now look. They'll go by in astonishment. So can you believe that great, that marvelous place in a day, in an hour, it was gone? Now look at Revelation 6 and 7. And when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And as we know, that word is not really pale, that's chloros in the Greek, which means green. And behold, a green horse. And his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him. And power was given over them for a fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death. Just death. People just dying of death. Times are so horrific, so horrifying. People can't breathe. Their hearts just stop. With death and with the beasts of the earth. But that word beasts of the earth is not beasts of the earth. It is therion. Therion is venomous beasts. Like COVID-19 or anthrax or COVID-25. Which we don't have yet, but they're working on it. Verse 20, in those days and in that time the Lord, saith the Lord, the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for, and there shall be none, and the sins of Judah, and they shall not be found, for I will pardon them whom I reserve. Why? Because they turned their faces to Jerusalem and said, let us seek Zion. What is Zion? God's holy mountain. Let us seek righteousness. And why are their sins pardoned? Because they sought righteousness. They sought what? What is righteousness? What is the righteousness of God? It is his law word. What was his law word? The Messiah. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word there is Logos, the law word, the revealed righteousness of God. In the beginning was the Word, and the law word was with God, and the law word was God, and the law word became flesh and dwelt among us. So when they seek righteousness, whom do they seek? They seek the Messiah. Go against the land of Merathaim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod. Waste and utterly destroy them, saith the Lord, and do according to all that I have commanded thee. Merathaim, by the way, is a biblical term found in Jeremiah, and it means two things. First thing, it means double rebellion. Double rebellion. Do we see any rebellion in America today? We've had a rolling coup for 3.5 years against the President of the United States. We had a president before him that hated his own country and hated its Christian heritage. He says, destroy Pekod. What is Pekod? Interesting. It's a city where a decisive battle was fought that ended the Babylonian Empire, and the meaning of the word is double bitterness. Bitterness and rebellion. Sound like any place we know? As we march in the streets and we say Black Lives Matter, and the lives of black people in community after community after community are destroyed, burned up, trashed. Whose lives are being destroyed by all of these riots? Not rich white folks. They live in the other part of town. Who's being hit? The poor, the needy, those eking out an existence. Double bitterness, double rebellion. Verse 23, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? So this nation, this superpower, is the hammer of the whole earth. How many nations can you find right now that fit that description? Russia is a second-rate superpower. They've dwindled. China is still, but despite all the bluster and blow about China, it is still a second-rate superpower. Their economy is in the toilet. That's why they released COVID-19 to the world, because their economy was just being destroyed from within. So they decided to bring the rest of the world down with COVID-19. It was a biological attack, and our leaders don't want to admit it, but that's exactly what it was. It was Therion. And by the way, look how quickly it took our economy down. $5 trillion out of the economy in a few months. The great and powerful, we can't be hurt. But we were. Yeah. And now we're all still walking around like zombies trying to figure out what happened to us. And we've got whole cities that are demanding that you cannot go outside without a mask. Yeah. But outside is the safest place in the world, because the wind carries the virus away. The warm temperatures of the summer kill it. The more masks you wear outside, the worse your chances are of staying well, because if you've got any virus that's staying with you, you're breathing it right back in. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? And I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. Isn't it amazing where we've come? When the Mayflower landed, the only residents of this place from the old world to the new world were Christians, believers. And by the way, not just nominal religious folks. These were people who had been martyred for their faith. Their families had died. Brothers and sisters, wives and husbands had been killed for their faith. 66% of them were Sabbath keepers. 1/3 of them were Puritans trying to reform the Church of England from within. They had literally been sawn apart, burned at the stake, dismembered one limited time before being burned at the stake. These weren't just religious folks. These were people willing to die for their faith, and many of their families had already done so. I have laid a snare for thee, the Lord says. The Lord said, He hath opened his armory, and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation. For this is the work of the Lord of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. He goes back to the Chaldeans. Who are they? Again, the financiers, the bankers, the diplomats. Try and diplomat your way out of this. Because I have pronounced my judgment, the Lord says. Come against her from the uttermost border. Open her storehouse. Cast her up as heaps. And destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left. Nothing of her be left. The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of the Lord and the vengeance of his temple. The vengeance of the Lord. He can only spit in God's eyes so long, and then he says enough. And the vengeance of his temple. What was the temple? The temple was the law. The temple was Moses. The temple was righteousness. The vengeance of God's righteousness on an unrighteous land. That's what he's saying. Because of your sin, because of your idolatry, because of your murder, because of your innocent blood, I'm bringing judgment. Therefore shall her young men fall in the streets, and all her men of war shall be cut off in that day, saith the Lord. You know, you think you've got all the powerful armies, and you think you've got all the weaponry you need. Look what one virus did to America. One virus. One virus. We had an entire aircraft carrier put out of commission because of COVID-19. Do you think they could have defended anybody or fought anything? They could not have. Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord of hosts, for thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee. A sword is upon the Chaldeans, saith the Lord, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men. The sword is upon her liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. Not like God just comes out and calls them liars. So the sword is upon your liars. We got a whole city full of professionals. Therefore the wild beasts of the desert and the wild beasts of the island shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein. And by the way, an owl was a symbol of that which is demonic and dark. And the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall no more be inhabited forever. Neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Well, we know that didn't happen to ancient Babylon. It's still there. We know that it has never happened to England, Germany, France, Vatican. The EU is not a country. It's a conglomerate. Russia. It's never happened to Russia. Before Russia was the Byzantine Empire, which they usurped to take Russia. Isn't it funny? You had an aging Byzantine Empire that had lost their faith in God, and they were taken over by whom? Godless communists. There's always justice. The scales always balance in God's economy. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. They'll sit around and pontificate. They're going to dote. They're going to cuss and discuss the whole thing, time and time and time again, while destruction comes on them. Therefore the wild beasts of the desert and the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and they shall be inhabited no more forever. Neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation, until the new heaven and the new earth comes down. During the entire millennial reign of the Messiah, no one shall dwell there. No one. Not a human being. In fact, there's another place that says, not even a stone will be cut from there for building in another place. Why? Because it's so polluted. It is so toxic that not even a stone will be taken from the land. Look at Revelation 18. After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. This end time Babylon is not going to do well. There's going to be nothing left here. In another passage it says there'll be nothing left there but the howling creatures. What is the howling creatures? The screaming demons. That's what will be left there. The screaming demons. That's it. As God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, no man shall abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. Behold, a people shall come from the north, a great nation, and many kings shall be raised from the coasts of the earth. Again, we see that armies of the north, meaning spiritual and physical. And what lies to the north of us? Russia, China. What are the kings of the coasts? How about the Arab nations that despise us? Remember, the house of Islam only has two houses. The house of Islam and the house of war. If you ain't in the house of Islam, you're in the house of war. And if you are in the house of Islam, but you ain't exactly like me, you're also in the house of war. Islam has never been spread evangelically. It's always been spread at the point of a sword. Islam is not a religion. It is a satanic, political, economic, and social movement. It is the exact opposite of Yahweh. Everything Yahweh stands for, they're the opposite. It is the mere reflection. Why? Because it is a religion of Satan. It is his creed. Kill, destroy, murder. It is a religion of blood, always has been from the beginning. So this end-time Babylon, is facing judgment. The king of Babylon hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and the pangs of a woman in travail. So, we've got a president who's strong right now. If he's reelected, he'll remain strong. They're trying to take him down for 3 years, and he thumbs his nose at him. But that president, this president that it's talking about, this king, this leader, this potentate, whatever he is, he's not strong. He's a coward. The king of Babylon hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs as of a woman in travail. You know, there's only one thing worse than having a traitor at the helm, and that is to have a weakling at the helm. So this end-time Babylon will fall under the hand of a weak leader. Therefore, hear ye the counsel of the Lord, that he hath taken against Babylon and his purposes, that he hath proposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Back to the Chaldeans again. Why does that keep coming up so much, again and again and again? Because it describes a people so adequately. Bankers, financiers, diplomats, fierce warriors. The land of the Chaldeans, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. Whenever this nation falls, the whole world goes into mourning. How many nations do you know that the whole world would go into mourning if they fell? If it is going to send the entire world into mourning and chaos. And by the way, it is out of that mourning and that chaos and that darkness and that absolute feeling of forlornness, that emptiness of soul that the world feels, that sets the stage for exactly where Adolf Hitler was before World War II. It is out of that darkness and that poverty and that chaos and that fear that a leader arises, because what does he do? He says, I can save you. Isn't that what Hitler told the German people? I can save you. But the gods he brought in was not the God of the Bible. He brought in the old pagan Nordic gods. He was a pagan. Well, this man that rises out of this chaos will be the ultimate pagan. The beast, the false prophet, the Antichrist arise. What does that nation sound like to you? It's beginning to get harder and harder to find any nation but one that looks like that. Revelation 14, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach, and unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. When America sneezes, the world yells Gesundheit. Why? Because we are the hammer of the nations. Revelation 18, and after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. The fate of Babylon, the rich and the powerful. They deceive the nation. They deceive the world. They strip the world. In fact, Scripture says they'll come in like fanners and fan the land. They take the wealth. They transfer the wealth. We just lost $5 trillion from a $15 trillion economy. Wealth does not disappear, ever. It simply changes hands. It changed hands. $5 trillion went to fund what? The evil plans of those who want world governance. And what is world governance? The system of the Antichrist. And it's coming. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon, and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me, a destroying wind. Look at our streets. It's been 3 weeks now, 4 weeks now, and they're still burning, looting, murdering, raping, pillaging. In our streets, in American streets. And these governors and these mayors, they let it happen. Why? Because of politics. They want the chaos. Maybe it'll hurt the election of Donald Trump. So they don't care if you're killed in your bed. They don't care if your business is burned down. They don't care if your life is destroyed. Because it's about politics. How evil does it have to get before we look around and say, enough? You know, in the Old West, if you stole a man's horse, you stole his ability to survive, and it was a hanging offense. It carried the death penalty. Why? Because you left a man with no means. But when they burned the stores down of the people in neighborhoods, when they killed the people that try and protect their property, or if you are successful in protecting your property, they arrest you and charge you. When you destroy a man's life, his business, something he spent 40 years building, you destroy it in a blink of an eye and cared nothing for it. What do? Do you go to prison? No. What do? You get a grant from government because you're oppressed. I will send into Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. All of these rich people that are controlling the nation, they don't love America. They're not building commerce. You look at our laws. Our laws are not designed to protect Americans. They're designed to protect the rich and large corporations. They protect the rich and the powerful from us, lest we might be able to eke out an existence. But the surprise is going to be on them when it's all done. Because those they think that are their friends, their buds, belong to the same old clubs with the brass and the oak and the big libraries and the fancy desks. They're going to find out those people don't love them either. And they will send into Babylon fanners that shall fan her. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans. They will be thrust through in the streets. Go out and try and oppose the mob now. Go out and try and oppose Antifa. Go out and try and oppose the BLM marchers. They'll say, oh yes, but we have to respect the right of the innocent protesters. Let me ask you a question. If 5 guys watch another guy kill someone and refuse to stop him and refuse to report him, are they innocent bystanders? No. They are co-conspirators. They're accessories after the fact and during the fact. You are not an innocent protester if you're watching a crime being committed and you allow it to happen and you don't report it. You're an accessory. You're every bit as guilty as they. If you are with a group of guys that robbed a liquor store, even if you sat in the car and they shot the guy inside, you are tried for the same murder.
Yep.
You're an accessory. For Israel has not been forsaken, nor Judah his God, of the Lord of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. So they're still my people. By the way, America was never the chosen people. Israel is the chosen people. Judah is the chosen people. Who is Israel? Well, we are Israel as Gentiles and as Jews who have been part of the disappeared tribes. We are Israel, but we are not that Israel. That Israel God chose specifically. And he said, if I'm willing to do this to them, what will I do to you? But I haven't taken my eyes off of Israel all of these years.
Yeah.
Because they are Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. So the Hebrew prophets went through Germany. And they said, get out. Get out. Get out. It's coming. The vengeance is coming. You remember the Kristallnacht? They go through and they break all of the windows and rough up and kill the Jews in Germany. The Kristallnacht is coming for America. Flee and escape out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hands. What does a golden cup mean? We've been a treasure. We've been a princely power. We have been royalty in the Lord's hands. But guess what that cup is? It's a cup of wrath. And you can only add so much to it before it starts spilling over. And at some point in time, the Lord dumps that cup of wrath. Remember in Revelation, they took the golden censers and they put in the incense. And they mixed it with what? The prayers of Yahweh's people. And they put fire to it and they cast it down to the earth, and the thunderings and the lightnings.
Yeah.
That time is coming. Flee and escape out of the midst of Babylon. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hands, that made all of the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Europe just self-destructed. We destroyed all of the powers that held back the floods of the Middle East. And what happened? 3 to 5 million Mohammedans rushed into Europe. Now, why is that important? Down the road, what happens? Israel goes to war. Europe has to settle the matter. By the way, I don't believe that they settled the matter because Israel was losing. I think Israel was about to whip all the Arab states in the area.
Yeah.
And the Europeans stepped in and said, oh my God, look what's happening. And they're talking to their God, which is small g. Oh my God, what's happening? And they step in to save whom? Not Israel. And at the end of 3.5 years, the treaty is broken. Why? Because Europe is no longer Christian Europe. What is it? It's an Islamist Europe. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her. Take balm for her pain. If so, she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Why? Because Babylon didn't want to be healed. Babylon did not want to be healed. Forsake her, and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reaches unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. When God came down to Sodom and Gomorrah, what did he say? He said, I'm coming down to check this out personally, because the sin, the depravity of Sodom, the homosexuality is rising to the heavens. Did God need to come down and check it out? No. What was he doing? He was saying, nothing escapes me. I'm going to prove to you that it wasn't just my judgment. I'm coming here. And Abraham says, well, Lord, if I can find 50, just 50, is it okay? Will you save it then? I said, yeah, I'll do it for 50. How about 45? He's got like an auctioneer all of a sudden. You can see Abraham bargaining with God. Okay, God, how about 40? How about 40? Listen, God, don't get mad now. I'm just saying. How about 30? Now, listen, I know you're God and everything, but one more time. Now, don't get mad at me, but 20. Will you save it for 20? For 20 righteous men? Will you not destroy it so the righteous aren't? No? You'll do it? How about, Lord, if I can't find 20, maybe I can find 10. Will you do it for 10, Lord? Yeah, I'll do it for 10. So how many were there? There were 4. Why? The daughters were married, but what happened to the husbands? They didn't go. They stayed behind, wine, women, and song. How depraved were they? They come to Sodom. They're trying to rape 2 angels. They're trying to rape 2 angels. And Lot says, I'll give you my virgin daughters. I said, no, we want strange flesh. So the angels blind him and yank Lot in the house. And they are so depraved that even in blindness, they're groping for the door to try and find the handle to get in to rape the angels.
Wicked.
And God says that America, or end-time Babylon, whatever it is even more wicked than Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Make bright the arrows, verse 11 and 51. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. Who's that? That's Iran. That's the Median Empire, Persia. What have we done? We had a war, Gulf War I. George H. Bush. George Herbert Walker Bush. He goes in and he attacks Saddam Hussein. He wanted to finish the job, by the way, and the world wouldn't let him. He weren't quite onto his game yet. But he destabilizes Saddam Hussein. Why? Because if he'd have taken him out, probably there would have been a lot of consequences that they didn't want with oil and whatnot. So they leave him there. Why? Because he is a counterpoise to whom? Iran. And they weren't quite ready yet for Iran. But they were ready by the time they got to George Bush II, and Saddam fell. And when he fell, we stirred up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, and we have been at a semi-hot war with Iran ever since. We emboldened them. Iran has since taken over and compromised both Hamas and Hezbollah and uses them as their tools. ISIS was a tool of Iran. Iran controls Lebanon. Chaos is all over the Middle East because of what America has done. We have taken, listen, Saddam Hussein was a dirtbag. But he was a strong-armed dirtbag that kept warring tribes that have hated each other for thousands of years under a lid. You take away the strong man, you take away the binding that keeps it together, and now you've got chaos. So that's why we did it. Now we've got chaos. Because from chaos comes what? Comes the new world order. It would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord has raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes for his device against Babylon to destroy it, because it's the vengeance of the Lord and the vengeance of his temple. The fourth horse of Revelation. What color is it? Green. The green flag of Islam, the spirit of the kings of the Medes. Set a standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up a watchman. Prepare the ambushes. For the Lord hath devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. O thou that dwellest upon many waters. Wow, there's a clue. Many waters. Babylon, by the way, doesn't dwell upon many waters. Who has the largest inland ocean in the world? Do you know? America, the Great Lakes. We've got the Gulf of Mexico. We've got the Gulf of California. We've got the Atlantic Ocean. We've got the Pacific Ocean. We've got mighty rivers like the Mississippi River, the Missouri River, the Colorado River, the Rio Grande. The Colorado runs all the way down into the Rio Grande River. It sets the border between us and Mexico. A nation, a land that dwells on many waters. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Do what you want, Babylon, and it ain't going to help. Because when I devise a plan against you, it is going to be carried out. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, the measure of thy covetousness. Do you remember last week what I said was one of the driving demons, one of the driving spirits of America? Covetousness. We are a land of covetousness. We always want what the other guy's got. The Lord of hosts has sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. Interestingly, here in this country, we have dropped our borders. We have no idea who's coming in and who's going out. We have 40 million people here illegally from, well, we used to say from Mexico, but now 55% of the people coming in are not Mexicans. They're from other places. They're El Salvadorians, and they're also Iraqis and Iranians and Chinese and Koreans. Guess what else we've got? 40 million Islamists. 40 million Mohammedans. That's 80 million people who are not Americans living in a nation of 320 million. 1/4, one out of every four people here is not an American, or is here for a purpose. Do you think the Islamists have put all of these people in here because they love America? Do you think Ilhan Omar loves America? Ilhan Omar is here to destroy America. But then so are the people she worked with, like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Why? Because they hate Christian America. Why? Because it's the last impediment to what? Global governance.
Hi, this is Jake Baker, and I want to thank you for joining us for part one of this multi-part series, Mystery Babylon, The Seeds of Destruction. I hope you'll join us for part two of this urgent message in these times of chaos, destruction, and frankly, madness. There's been a ferocious, dark spirit of evil unleashed upon the United States and on the world. And it's very important that as believers, we understand that if we do nothing or we do the wrong thing, this nation will surely be destroyed. This is a labyrinth of bad choices, but if we know the prophetic path, there is yet time. But that window is closing quickly. So join us for part 2 of Mystery Babylon, The Seeds of Destruction.